Okay. Hi, Howard, please unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. He's not able to unmute himself.
Oh, there it is.
Oh,
Hi.
there it is. All right.
Hi.
Hi,
How are you?
welcome. Welcome, everybody. We are very happy and glad that you guys are joining us this evening. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Mental Health America of Southeastern Michigan, a part of Rahma Worldwide seminar. My name is Kaylud Maflahi. I am Rahma Worldwide Public Health Program Manager and your host this evening. Welcome. According to Mental Health America, while 1 in 5 people will experience a mental illness during their lifetime, everyone faces challenges in life that can actually impact their mental health. This Mental Health Month, join us in supporting the effort in promoting mental health for all. Mental Health America of Southeastern Michigan, a part of Rahma Worldwide, is proud to announce the establishment of a resolution to commemorate May 2021 as Mental Health Month. And this resolution was actually adopted by the Michigan Senate on May 13, 2021. And I would like now to introduce our esteemed panelist. Please, we have Imam Mustafa Alturk from Iona. And I will give you guys the detailed bio later on. Professor Howard Lipovich, I'm sorry, this is the second time I'm pronouncing your name. I'm sorry. Um, we have also Pastor Edwin Esteves, welcome. And we have Dr. Nipanji Thomas and Dr. Shadi Zaza, Rahma Worldwide President and CEO. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. We are very happy to see you and happy to have you here with us in this very, very special event. As we learn more and more about the connection between the mind and body, it becomes clear that spirituality, religion, and faith can help some individuals live well with mental health conditions. Some individuals and families turn to faith in times of crisis to help in their recovery, while others find that spiritual practices help them continue to manage their mental health. Some people find that religion and individual spirituality have a positive impact on their physical and mental health. So today we will tackle the issues involving the intersection of culture and religious beliefs about mental health, the stigma and the stigma and culture and religious values playing a significant role in the mental health care, utilizing disparities, social support, and religiosity as contributing factors to resilience and mental well-being. Parents' refusal of medical treatment based on religious and or cultural beliefs, the law ethical principles, and clinical implications. We will also tackle the development of a faith-based mental health literacy program to improve treatments and treatment engagement. And last but not least, we will also tackle the topic on community engagement and planning versus resources for services for implementing depression quality improvement. So we would like to start off with our panelists. Welcome, everyone. And we will start with um, our we'll start with Dr. Shadi from Rahma Worldwide. He is the CEO of Rahma Worldwide and the president of Rahma Worldwide. Dr. Shadi is going to also speak to us about a specific topic when it comes to religion and um, mental wellness. So perhaps we will start off by asking Dr. Shadi, what are those positive effects that religion can actually help people cope with hardship?
Thank you, everyone. Forgive me, I have to go first, but you all better than me when speaking in this field. I'm just like adding my impact, so forgive me. I would say for that, we have spiritual life and we are in need to fulfill our spiritual life. So balancing spirituality in the hardship one of the tools we can use when we get a difficult time in our life. I would say if we can encourage people to see events through a hopeful lens, positive impact, positive religion thinking can help people rise above stress times by allowing them to see a tragedy as an opportunity or an advantage to open a new page in their lives, and also to become close to God or to grow closer to a higher power or to improve their lives. Adopting a sense of connectedness, also by become closer to God or to the Creator. Some people see religion as making them related to a bigger family, bigger than them. And this feeling gives them tranquility inside their self. This can happen through prayer, meditation, or through taking part in religious meetings, listen to spiritual words, or even walking outside alone. That maybe give them a relief. Developing connection through ritual practices. Religious ritual practices can help people acknowledge that something meaningful is taking place. And these events often mark the beginning of something, as in the case with weddings, or the end of something, as is the case with the funerals. They help guide and sustain people through life's most difficult transitions. Finally, I would say it's extremely important that people use their beliefs in a way that makes them feel empowered and helpful. This can actually be extremely helpful in terms of managing stress during times when a crisis or hardship. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else would like to add to what Dr. Shadi actually just talked about?
I want to jump on what he said, because I thought it was very meaningful, very insightful. As part of my ordination process, where you become a pastor, one of the things you have to do is become, you work at a, you become sort of a chaplain at a hospital. I had the pleasure of working at Trenton Psychiatric Hospital. So people dealing with significant mental health issues and challenges, as well as poverty and other issues there. And I remember being with a small group, and just like you said, we could track the health of an individual by how they prayed. So when you prayed with them, when they just kept praying, well, I can't wait to get out of here. I can't wait to get better. I can't, and hey, that's good too, right? We should all pray for ourselves. That's that, God accepts that as well. But the moment that we noticed growth and maturity and a sense of health was the moment they started praying for someone else. And I remember in this small group, suddenly they say, for the victims of the hurricane in some other country. And in that moment, you wrote that down. You took the notes. You said, I'm seeing some improvement because there's something bigger than yourself. So it kind of takes you out of yourself. And there can sometimes be that temptation. And the other piece that you made me think of is, I know there's an anthropologist, I don't want to get the name wrong, but it was a famous anthropologist who said the birth of civilization was the moment that we found these bones of human beings where the femur bone was repaired. And that's the birth of civilization, according to her. And what she was meaning by that is, in most animals, that would have killed them, right? They couldn't survive. They would have been left behind. But the fact that this group of human beings stayed behind, repaired the bone, and then were able to advance, not leaving anyone behind, is the birth of civilization. And I think religion at its best can help integrate that we don't leave anyone behind whether we think they're valuable or not to the economy, to jobs, to whatever it might be, that we're here to care for them. And that's a sacred task by God. So I loved what you were saying.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil. I did not introduce you actually. So Reverend Edwin Estevez, I'm sorry, is the son of a gentleman immigrants. Actually, was born and raised in North Jersey. He currently is the new pastor of the outreach and mission at Kirk and the Hells Presbyterian Church in Bloomfield, Michigan. He's also the co-founder of the Lumina Arts with his wife, Dr. Meredith Heiss Estevez, a minister that seeks to support artists through wellness and spirituality. I love that. When it comes to art, you can express yourself in so many different ways when it comes to art. So thank you so much. You are with us today, and I would also like to just give a general question here when everyone gets a chance to speak. So the first thing we want to tackle is, what is spirituality? So basically, we can think about spirituality in a different way. So one of way that we can think about it is that is the meaning and purpose that we look into our life. So what is it that you can actually say about spirituality when it comes to faith and mental wellness? Imam Turk, please, perhaps we'll start with you, and then I'll give you the bio after you speak.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Khalud, and thank you all for participating here at the panel on this very important subject. To answer the question regarding spirituality, you see, we humans are two composites came together, two entities that make us who we are. There's the body and there's the spirit. And these two make what we call the human soul. So you have body, spirit, and then we have the mind that God has given us. Spirituality is to connect the body with the spirit through the Creator God Almighty. So when we connect with God Almighty, the spirits that are within us make that connection. And if that connection is maintained according to the wishes of the Creator, not according to our own desires, the body stays healthy. We have this saying in Arabic that says, a healthy mind is in a healthy body, or the mind, a healthy mind is in the healthy body. And a healthy body can be, of course, healthy by doing the right thing, eating the right food, staying away from intoxicants and so on and so forth. But in order to maintain that body, you need to have a healthy mind. And to have a healthy mind is to have you be connected with the Creator God Almighty, because there are certain conditions in life that will produce anxieties, that will produce, all sorts of depressions. There's this one verse in the Quran where God Almighty had specifically informed us, at least in the Holy Scripture, the Muslim Holy Scripture, that we shall surely try you with some fear and hunger and shortage of wealth and ailments and diseases and crops and so on and so forth. But give good news to those who are patient, those who can endure those, conditions in life. And those who can endure those are those who are connected with God Almighty, those who are so-called spiritual. And they are the ones who are able to endure these states of mind that may produce anxiety and mental illness and so on and so forth.
Very well said. This is really great to know that our spirituality is actually connected to our well-being, and it's vice versa as well. So introducing Imam Alturk. Imam Alturk was born in Beirut, Lebanon in 1955. I'm sorry, I'm just saying how old you are.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Okay, it's all right. It's all healthy. He emigrated to America in 1976 and aimed to study the start of the Lebanese Civil War. So he has a Bachelor's of Arts and degree in mathematics. He worked as an electronic engineering and consultant for many years. At the moment, Imam Turk is very active in Muslim community of North America, both as a leader and a speaker. He is also the publicly engaged Muslim leader and leading interfaith activist in the Detroit area. Imam Turk also serves in many different boards, such as he is a member of the Religious Leaders Forum for Abrahamic Faiths. He's also a member of the Interfaith Center for Racial Justice, the executive. And he's also a member of the Church Police and City, the CPC of the City of Warren. We really appreciate your input, and I'm sure there's more into your bio here, but we're just giving a little summary of that. Thank you so much for introducing yourself and giving us this this insight about the spirituality. Dr. Thomas, how about you jump in and talk about the spirituality part? So we know that religion is actually linked with a particular faith, tradition, or institution. So how can we tackle that, having faith and having a particular belief that actually that give us that spiritual well-being when it comes to our mental wellness?
Okay, well, I'm going to come from a different angle with this because I work with quite a few clients that don't have faith, especially individuals that have substance abuse issues or trauma in their life, have lost a loved one, so they have lost that faith. A lot of them have turned away from religion. So coming in with a spirituality component doesn't count toward one's faith or their religion, but to have spirituality is to have a sense of purpose and to know that there's something greater than ourselves out there, whether you believe in God or you need to pray to a pillow. Whatever it is that you find spirituality in, and it causes you to have positive connections and interactions with people, for me, that's what I have to do for my clients, to tell them the difference between religion and spirituality, because you can have spirituality and still not necessarily practice a particular religion.
Very good. Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas. Actually, let me introduce Dr. Thomas as well. Dr. Nipanji Thomas is a professor at the Southeastern New Hampshire University in the Counseling, Education, and Supervision program. She is also a professional counselor for the state of Michigan, a clinical traumatologist, and the owner of a small private practice, the immediate past president of the Michigan Counseling Association, and a host of the In Session, an online podcast for Detroit's WJZZ radio, and much more, which is giving a little summary of her bio. We appreciate her being here. Now we're going to jump to Professor Howard. How are you, Professor Howard?
Good to see you.
It's good to see you again. It's always a pleasure having you. This is our second time inviting you over for our event. Let me just give you a little intro, and then you can jump in with our topic. Professor Howard. Professor Howard is a fourth-generation Detroiter. He is a graduate of the Hillel Day School in University of Michigan, Columbia University, where he received a PhD in history. Professor Howard is also currently an associate professor of history and director of the Cohen-Haddo Center for Judaic Studies at Wayne State University. He is also the author of, most recently, of Jewish and Judaism in World History. He is currently writing a history of the Neolog movement in Judaism. It is always a pleasure having you here with us, Professor Howard. So please jump in, and perhaps you can just tackle a little bit about how religious leaders are there to guide us through when it comes to spirituality and our religious journey in life.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be invited to be part of these important events and your important panels. So I really appreciate it. And seeing the group of you sitting together over there, I have to say it's nice to see, moving back in the direction of in person, which is really, I really wanted to be there today as well, but timing didn't work out. But just seeing you together is just, it's a little emotional, I have to admit. In any case, So I want to speak about not only about the role of leaders, but I want to say a few words a little more broadly about how spirit.
Actually, let me put on a mask because I'm not.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm not.
Okay. Ready?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, there's a little bit of reverb in the background. I don't know if you're all hearing that as well.
Yeah, because you're in Zoom and we are opening.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Our guests actually can hear you.
That's fine. That's fine. So I want to speak not only about how the role of leaders in dealing with mental health and spiritual issues, but also more broadly about how Judaism has handled issues of mental health. And I think it's instructive because every time I participate in one of these sorts of panels, one of the things that strikes me, and one of the learning experiences for me, is how much Jews and Judaism share in common with members of other faiths. It always strikes me, and I'm sure the same will be true today. So to understand the Jewish view of mental health, or the notion of mental health in Judaism, which is an ancient notion, goes all the way back to the beginning. Even in the Torah, even in the Bible, there are stories of individuals with mental health issues. Maybe the most notable is King Saul. King Saul was the predecessor of King David, and King Saul, the way he's described in the book of Samuel, he has these moments of great ecstasy and inspiration and energy, but he also has these moments of deep depression. And in modern terms, it seems like he was either bipolar or manic depressive, or perhaps was suffering. He heard voices as well. Maybe he was suffering from some sort of schizophrenia. And in one of these stories, the one thing that would sort of bring him out of these pits of depression was that the young David, who eventually would become King David, would play music for him, and that would, in the words of the book of Samuel, soothe his soul. So there was an awareness that mental health issues would affect a person's spirituality and the way they engage the world. Now, Judaism, as it deals with most things, deals with it legalistically in terms of, how does an individual with mental health issues, how is that person part of the community? How do leaders of the community incorporate them in? And the context I would understand this in is the broader Jewish emphasis on the importance of preservation of life, which in Hebrew, the notion is pikuach nefesh, which means the saving of life. The full expression is that the rabbis introduced very early on, pikuach nefesh doche Shabbat. The saving of a life takes priority even over the sacred obligation of observing the Sabbath. That's how central it was. Now, quickly, the rabbis expanded the notion of the importance of saving and preserving a life to the importance of preserving health. Preserving one's health. And they were very clear that when they say the importance of the centrality of preserving an individual's health, it meant not only physical health, but also mental health. Let me give you a specific example. Now, this is a passage from the Mishnah. The Mishnah is an exposition of the laws of the Torah. It's the first part of the Talmud. I suppose if the Torah is comparable to the Quran, the Mishnah and the Talmud are comparable to Hadith. So there's a passage in the Mishnah which makes the following statement. Now, it's talking about the prohibition on the Sabbath of kindling a flame or extinguishing a flame. And so it makes the statement that one who extinguishes a flame, meaning puts out a candle or a lamp on the Sabbath, is obligated or has violated the prohibition of the Sabbath. But if that person is doing it because they have some kind of fear, or because they suffer from, and hear the term ruach ra'ah, an evil spirit, or if they are, even more simply, if because they have difficulty falling asleep, that is permissible. In other words, already in the Mishnah, there's a recognition that an individual's mental health, in this case, some kind of uncontrollable fear, or involuntary fear, or some kind of difficulty falling asleep, was a health issue. And even though it wasn't necessarily a physical health issue, it had to do with the person's psyche, and it took priority over the laws of observing the Sabbath. Now, in Judaism, really the go-to guy, the main voice on anything having to do with mental health and spirituality was none other than Maimonides. Moses Maimonides, of course, is familiar to all of us. Maimonides wasn't only a first-rate rabbinic scholar and a master of the Talmud and the Bible and Jewish texts, he was also a physician. Not only a physician, he was the court physician of the Sultan of Egypt. And Maimonides, commenting on that passage of the Mishnah, he asked the question, what does the Mishnah mean by an evil spirit? This situation. And he says very specifically, and I'll quote Maimonides here, the evil spirit referred to in the Mishnah refers to melancholy. There is a type of melancholy that will cause a person to lose his or her mind when he sees light or when he is among other people. He finds peace only in darkness, in solitude, in desolate places. And this is the reason Maimonides concluded that that person is allowed to extinguish the candle even on the Sabbath. Now, Maimonides, he expanded on this notion in another passage he wrote about mental health. And I'll quote again. He says, and here he's talking about not only the problem, but the antidote. Now, I want to emphasize that he wrote this 800 years ago. And I think that the antidote he's suggesting, even though he doesn't have the medical terminology we have now, what he's describing as an antidote, I think, is remarkably relevant and current. So in his own words, again, I quote Maimonides, one who suffers from melancholia, and that was his inclusive word for, mental discomfort. One who suffers from melancholia may rid himself of it by listening to and singing all kinds of instrumental music, by strolling through beautiful gardens and splendid buildings, by gazing upon beautiful pictures and other things that enliven the mind and dissipate gloomy moods. In other words, for Maimonides, the antidote to a kind of what he understood as mental anguish or mental sadness or mental discomfort or inability to cope with day-to-day things was, first of all, things that are aesthetically pleasing, but also things that were spiritually pleasing. That's why he begins by singling out music. Maimonides understood the power of music in the same way that King David would play music and bring his predecessor out of some kind of depression. Maimonides understood that more broadly, that people who have mental health issues, they can be addressed directly. Now, Maimonides becomes a kind of template, and this is the last thing I will say. Maimonides, his understanding becomes a template because he understood the obligation or the responsibility of dealing with mental health issues, not only as the responsibility of an individual family, but of the entire community. The entire community together shares responsibility for dealing with individuals who have these kinds of situations. And one of the places in the Bible, another place in the Bible he refers to is in the book of Deuteronomy, where reference is made to what is known as Ben Sorer Umoreh, the wayward child. Now, this is a child who the parents cannot control. Now, some commentators understood this to be a delinquent child, a bad child. But other commentators, including Maimonides, said the child is not wayward, the child is not difficult because he or she is bad, is evil, is a criminal, but rather because the child has a health issue. And the responsibility for dealing with the wayward child, first responsibility would fall on the parents and the family, but ultimately it was the community together that would deal with it. And in this spirit, Jewish communities around the world, they designated a space within the Jewish community that came to be known as the Hekdesh. Now Hekdesh is a Hebrew word which derives from the Hebrew word for sacred. A Hekdesh is like a sacred space. It's etymologically related. For example, the Hebrew word for the temple in Jerusalem is Beit HaMikdash. So Mikdash and Hekdesh are related. The Hekdesh in a Jewish community was a combination of a poorhouse, was a hospice, but it was also a place where individuals who had issues that the family could not handle, they could be handed over to the Jewish community, and the Jewish community as a unit, as a whole, would help the family and the individual cope. And the ultimate goal was to eventually reintegrate that individual back into the flow of the Jewish community. But it was something that's seen collectively, in the same way that spirituality was not only something seen as something individual, but also seen as something collective and communal.
Absolutely.
I think
Thank
that's a
you
good place
so
to
much. You did great. Thank you so much for this great insightful information when it comes to the different faiths and the explanation of spirituality and how us as humans, we deal with it in a different way.
based on our beliefs, rituals, and practices. We know religious leaders are there to guide us through many things in life. They also guide us through our religious journey. So if we follow a religion, that means that we are accepting guidelines. We're accepting guidance. We are also accepting practices, and that gives us discipline as well. So, for example, if we do things at a certain time, such as saying a prayer or not eating certain foods, that's also giving us discipline within our spiritual well-being. Now, I'm going to move on to Pastor Edwin Esteves, and I would like to, and then you can start off with us with answering this question. What is the difference between spirituality and religion? Are they the same?
Thank you. Appreciate it. First, I would just want to say it's been really great to hear all of you, the different perspectives and the nuances and also the commonalities that we're sharing in terms
Absolutely.
of our faiths and where we're coming from. I think on the one hand, if we're talking about, I think a useful metaphor is talking about sports. I find that to be helpful. So you might look at spirituality kind of like saying, hey, we're going to meet in the backyard and we're going to play some soccer. You want in? And we go, oh, okay, yeah, sure. And there's some built-in rules, right? Like I can't grab the ball with my hand whenever I want, because then otherwise there's no game and everybody's playing around in the backyard. Religion might be more like, seeing Real Madrid and Barcelona play against each other, right? So they're more established. They have a history. They have a long tradition. They have also these rules, but there are also these other rules, like what colors do the fans wear when they show up to the game? What do you chant? What are the songs you sing? The rituals that you all share. So that's a way of distinguishing, let's say, organized or major religions with spirituality. However, I also want to do the small r religion because that word comes from, it's a Latin word for religio. So R-E is again, and then ligio is where we get our word from ligament. So it's to put back together again, right? So at its heart, there's the big R religion, like Real Madrid, Barcelona, which some people can be religious about, right? Fanatics. But then there's a small r in terms of what are the rituals that we put back together? And once you go there, then you start seeing spirituality and religion are a little closer than you think. Because, again, there's a spectrum. So the spectrum might be somebody who says, I want to work out. I want to lose a lot of weight this year. There's a guide for how you do that. There are things that work. There are things that may not work toward those goals. And so you have those guides. You have rules around that. But there might be a way in which, there's a need for community. And that's perhaps where religion and spirituality meet the most. That in some senses, I do believe, going back to what we think spirituality is, the way I like to define it is they are the stories we believe. They are the stories that we listen to. They are the stories we live out. They're the stories we tell. So for instance, you might believe, the world is just not a fair place. The world is not a fair place. That's the story you believe. You live that out. That's a way of seeing the world. But you might encounter a community that says, sometimes it can seem like that, but there's also good in the world. There's goodness in the world that's working toward fairness and justice. And so your story might be challenged. And so some of the choices we have is, do we pay attention to those other stories? Do we listen to the other stories? Are we challenged by those other stories, or do we just hold on to our own? And so I think that's where I think in some senses my colleague before was pointing to the individual versus the communal. It can get hyper individualized where it's just about my story and how the world revolves around me. And I think a way that a spiritual community, that's where we're starting moving now toward a religious expression, what that can help is make it that, well, it's not just about you. It includes you, but it's not just about you. And then on the other side of that is the extreme where the individual is completely removed, right? So that the individual doesn't matter. Their story doesn't matter. Their voice doesn't matter. You just, you need to be silent. You need to not participate. The community is going to tell you what to do. And of course, we would say, hey, that's not healthy community, right? We're not sharing our stories together. But the way we tell the stories, and here I'll end, is as my colleague was saying earlier, like music and the arts, religious, rituals, the stories we write and tell and hear. Those are all stories, right? They're stories about humanity, where we've come from, where we hope to go, the stories of pain and suffering, the stories of joy and hope. All of that, to me, is spirituality. And that is what undergirds everything. So for me, you said this earlier today. I had a pleasure of spending time with Dr. Shadi earlier today. And there's a story of the Garden of Eden. And there's a way in which after the garden, everything splits up. But there's this longing that we have to return to this garden again, where we're unified and where we're flourishing, right? Because that's the image of a garden. Things are growing, it's lush, it's beautiful, we can coexist together. And to me, that's what the stories can do and lift us out of ourselves and toward a deeper community, a more peaceful and loving and hopeful community.
Absolutely. Maybe I will just add in to say that religion and spirituality can actually help us develop our inner strength. It develops our inner strength. It also gives us peace and hope, and also makes us more optimistic and more happy and hopeful. So another part of the spirituality, perhaps Imam Mustafa Turk could actually start us with that, is, can spirituality and religion be helpful during mental illness? And Dr. Thomas will end us with that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yes, of course. There is a direct link between religion and spirituality.
Absolutely.
If we're talking about religion, we're not talking about some secular set of or code of life. We're talking about divine guidance that we spiritual people have received from God, or people who adhere to faith. So the way I look at religion, by the way, the world religion itself had been the original understanding of religion. If you look up like early dictionaries of the 1900s, early 1900s, it meant a way of life. But unfortunately, that had been reduced to some dogma, some rituals, and some perhaps social customs with all religions of the world. Whereas the way we in Islam see religion, it is a complete code of life. It's individual and collective. So God has guided man from the very beginning in all of their endeavors and affairs, whether individually or publicly. And speaking of the Garden of Eden, let's talk about the Garden of Adam and Eve in their preparation before coming into earth and becoming a vicegerent of God, or a deputy of God here on earth. They were told to roam around, eat to your delight what you see from the garden, however, don't come near that tree. So there was something that is forbidden for them to do. However, to make a long story short, Satan, the devil, enticed them to eat from the tree or taste from the tree, commit a sin. They, Adam and Eve, feel remorseful about what they did. God forgive them. And now that concludes the period of training of Adam and Eve in the garden. And now they're about to assume their role here on earth. Remember, Adam and Eve is our first couple that inhabited the earth. And that's the beginning of the divine project, by the way. So a clear instruction came to them from God. We have two accounts in the Quran that are so very beautiful. The first account came in chapter 2 of the Quran, where God said to both Adam and Eve, descend down, both of you, all of you together, meaning Adam and Eve, and also the devil, because the devil is here and he's gonna be with us until the end of time to take us away from the path of God. So he said, whenever guidance come to you from me, whoever follows my guidance will never be in a state of sorrow or a state of sadness or in a state of anxiety. So we have this instruction from the very beginning. If we adhere to God's guidance, that's not to say you're not going to experience those moments of fear, of hunger, of shortage of wealth, of ailments, of diseases. All those trials are part and parcel of our life here on earth. However, having that attachment with God and knowing that, I am adhering and following this divine guidance, I am going to be okay. It's kind of like a way of consoling your soul through this divine guidance that we have. The other account you find in chapter 20, it's in the reverse order. God said, descend down, all of you, enemies to one another, meaning the devils and humans are going to be enemies to one another. Whenever guidance comes to you from me, whoever follows that guidance will never go astray, nor will be miserable. So that's the flip side of you will never be in a state of anxiety and so on and so forth. But then he said, whoever turns away from my remembrance, he will have certainly a miserable life in this world. So we have these instructions, divine instructions, that tell us that if we continue to adhere to God and follow his guidance and be attached to him, because we know God is in control. We know, let me tell you this incident, if I may, very quickly.
Yes, please go ahead.
And this is a proof of God is there, present, hearing, and seeing. So I had a teacher who converted to Islam very recently, and she is harassed at work, right? Because of her new hijab and her new faith. So she calls me and she wanted me to, she complains obviously about her supervisor being so racist and so on and so forth. So I was talking with her, she wanted me to meet with the supervisor and HR as her Imam. I said, I don't mind. I will definitely accommodate your request. However, immediately what came to my mind is the CEO of a charter school that we were trying to work with. I said, you know what? Let me tell you, she was so anxious and so depressed beyond belief, stressed out beyond belief. So I told her, okay, when this is all said and done, I'm going to connect you with Mr. Ahmed for the charter school. I'm sure he'll find you a better job where you don't have to worry about your supervisor. I swear to God, the moment I hang up, Ahmed Sabir calls me to talk about something else. And I said, my God, I just talked about you to this sister.
Deja vu.
Deja vu. No, this is not deja vu. This is indeed.
It is. Absolutely.
He's hearing, he's seeing, he's listening. And when I told her that afterwards, I was walking into a meeting, so I could not speak with them, as much as I would have loved to. But after that, I spoke with him and I told him the situation. And I swear to God, he said to me, he says, she can call me right now. I'll get her a job next week. And I can get her a job in the new Dawn Academy that he's opening in the fall. So when I called her, it was like a big sigh of relief. She couldn't believe that this had happened. So divine intervention is real. God is there. Spirituality is real. Being connected to the divine, I truly believe in that. And I believe that that will bring solace and tranquility to the heart, as was articulated by Dr. Shadi in his opening remarks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Imam Mustafa, for that clarification, that also insightful information. We know that spirituality and religions are very helpful to manage our stressful life events, especially during what we've been going through the past year and a half now with COVID. It is very, very hard for all of us to cope with the isolation part, with how we're going to be connected with our religious beliefs and spiritual positive spirituality that we should have when we are actually going through this pandemic, when we are isolated, we're staying away from people, and we are actually afraid. We are afraid to speak to people and be with gatherings. I know I went through depression because I'm a social person, and all of a sudden I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not going anywhere. So I'm so happy for this event today because I get to see people now. Woo, we're going back to normal. All right, so Dr. Thomas, I want to address this specific question to you, which is can spirituality and religion be helpful during our mental illness when it comes to our mental well-being, and how it's actually there is a positive impact about it. So please, you have the floor.
Well, for many of us, we do tend to go to our spiritual leaders for guidance first, because these are the people who know us the most. They know our families, they know our stories, they know the community. So of course, it's natural to go to your pastor, your imam, your minister, your rabbi, when you're experiencing some form of mental distress. So when we look at mental illness and somebody is going through a divorce, who are you going to go to? You're going to go to your pastor first, and you're going to talk about solutions, the problems that are going on in that relationship. If you're having problems with your children, you're going to go to your pastor first. Pastors and religious leaders have always been the first people that someone goes to in their life. So I don't know why that would be any different now. But we also need to understand when it's time to seek professional help.
Right.
Because there are some mental illnesses that require medication treatment.
True.
So we have to understand that faith alone
Is not
the only solution, but to have a combination of faith and professional help, because we need all of that. We are not just individuals with one part. There are many parts that make up a person. So we have to feed each part of us spiritually. We have to feed us emotionally, mentally, psychologically. And if that means going to a spiritual leader, then do that. When your faith is low, for example, I'm going to read a story that a young man wrote to me. And it was about his father. He said, I could tell my father was extremely depressed after he and my mother separated in late 2008. I asked him if he was getting help. He mentioned that he sought out counseling with several clergy and spiritual advisors, but had no help, and nothing could stop. There were tales that he was a sinner. So the clergy told his father that he was a sinner because of his marriage ending, and that his depression was weakening. So basically, depression made him weak. And as a result, that God was angry with him. So his spiritual advisor, which was also a licensed counselor, made things worse for him, and even abandoned him after seeing him. So he turned away from his biggest support system in his life. And several months later, he took his life. So we have to, as religious leaders, we really have to be careful of what we say to an individual, especially in times of distress. And if you don't know what to say, refer them to a professional.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Dr. Shadi, please.
Me just to put something, add to this. Maybe our next session to invite faith leaders and imams and guided them where to stop in their spiritual advice. And it's very good. As an imam in my career, I've seen a lot of cases where someone should direct him to the professional person right away. And sometimes I said, like, this is not my field. I cannot touch your case. You need to see someone who is doctor and get advice from him. But from my perspective, I am seeing that a religion and spirituality, it's like the immune system for the person. And like the body need to get the shot, the small virus, and to make the body to work and prepare himself for the big attack. Sometime I'm seeing a person who lost his only kid. And because his immune system spirituality working right, he stayed strong and he faced this challenge. And I'm seeing people, they are losing like small things. Maybe he lost the Wi-Fi in his phone and he start crying because he's facing a crisis from his perspective, you know. So religion work to prepare a person that you might face a challenge, you might be in a hardship. So be prepared.
Yes, religion is the foundation. I definitely agree with that.
Exactly.
I wanted to also echo, because I think that's a great idea to have a follow-up for faith leaders. But I also thought you were going to say this, because during the pandemic in 2020, I got to participate on a panel for faith leaders to be aware of their own mental health issues.
Absolutely.
So how many people,
Here.
how many faith leaders are drawn to be leaders and might be projecting some of their own things in their sermons and their treatment and their pastoral care, to your point. How many of them have unresolved issues around their family of origin, their finances? I mean, all sorts of things that can really, lead to spiritual malpractice, to use the medical language, right? Spiritual malpractice in people's lives. So I think that would also be really helpful to identify in yourself. What are the ways I'm an integrated individual? What are the ways I'm being healthy and practicing my own mental health? So I think that's really important.
We also say walk the walk and talk the talk. That's right.
Could I add something?
All right. Yes, please, Professor Howard, jump in.
Yeah, thank you for all those excellent comments. I love the learning experience for me personally. Never mind how good it is in general. Myself, I get to walk away with such great stuff. So yeah, you've enhanced me. But in terms of the role of spirituality with dealing with these problems, I agree that spirituality fortifies an individual to deal with a whole range of problems and challenges. But there is also a core notion in Judaism, the importance of respecting expertise. And I think we started to allude to that spiritual leaders, they have certain expertise, but there are others who have other expertise. And here there's a very interesting story in the Talmud, which is really the basis of this Jewish respect for expertise. It's a story about a rabbi. Well, his full name was Abba Arika, but he was simply known as Rav, the rabbi. He was sort of one of these high-profile individuals. When he moved from Israel to Babylonia, in the middle, as a young man, he was already an accomplished scholar, and his mentor wrote to the rabbis of Babylonia and said, should Rav be allowed to teach in Babylonia? And they said yes. And then they said, should Rav be allowed to adjudicate cases, legal cases in Babylonia? Yes, because he was knowledgeable in the law. But then they raised a specific issue. There is one of the things that was necessary in the Jewish community in Babylonia was to be able to identify which animals, this is a little technical, which animals are fit, are kosher, not to be eaten in this case, but to be sent to the temple in Jerusalem as a donation. And you had to have a certain knowledge to be able to recognize blemishes. So Rav's mentor said, should Rav be allowed to determine which animals are fit? And the answer was no. He does not have the expertise, no matter how much he has learned and studied, no matter how much of a spiritual leader he is. Then, of course, the retort was, and the defense of Rav was, he should be able to, not because of his learning and not because he was a spiritual leader, but because he spent 18 years apprenticing with cattle herders in order to understand the notion of which blemishes make an animal unfit. The point being that from that point on, Judaism and Jews have always had a deep respect for all kinds of expertise, and especially for those who are experts in science and medicine. In the last year, it's always amazed to me to know other Jews who are anti-vaxxers, because there is a clear consensus in the scientific community about vaccine, and Judaism has a clear notion that if the experts say take the vaccine, you don't even think, you simply do it. You defer to the experts on a whole variety of issues. So that I think it goes to the importance of spirituality in fortifying an individual, but also the importance of recognizing the limits of a specifically spiritual leadership in terms of crafting an overall, happy life and healthy life.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Professor Howard, for this, for you actually jumping in and giving us this clarification. Now we also need to actually to be really aware of the negative part of it. So in other words, can spirituality and religion be harmful during mental illness? In other words, we know there are some religious and spiritual beliefs may be empowering. So they are so powerful that for some individuals, they actually turn to their spiritual leaders for guidance and help in every way. And perhaps we know that some people don't have that extensive knowledge that they need professional help first, perhaps, or along with their advice and guidance of their clergymen and their pastors and imams and whoever they go in to get their guidance, even parents. But there are the negative impacts here when it comes to some religious leaders who actually give bad advice or do not know what to do, and also have that impression for those who are so faithful that are into their faith that you need to endure what you're going through because it's a test. Okay, so, and some actually direct them in a wrong way when it comes to, perhaps they give them some kind of rituals and practices that have nothing to do with actually them getting healthy. So let's talk about that for a minute. Let's ponder into this and speak about the harmful ways when it comes to some religious leaders, when it comes to mental illness and how this actually impacts us overall. Anyone would like to jump in?
Actually, if I may, it
Yes,
was
please.
said earlier by my esteemed panelists here that giving the patient this guilt feeling, okay, is absolutely a negative way of spirituality or religious advice to the, it may be so, but the fact that we're not in the mind of the patient, he's not going to accept, obviously, the blame of you are a sinner and you've done this and you're condemned to hell and you need to repent and all that. That is absolutely not helpful at all. So there should be other ways to treat the patient, particularly for pastors and imams and rabbis, to, of course, give them some solace and hope that God will help. However, in your case, whatever the case may be, you would need to seek medical help because, like was mentioned earlier, there are sometimes those mental illnesses that may lead into psychotic and other areas of mental illness that no pastor and no citing of any divine scripture is going to help, because now it's become really physical, and they need to see a doctor for that. And there are doctors who, mental illness doctors, psychiatrists, who are professionals in this field and can handle these, right? Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to refer those patients to medical doctors in order to seek really genuine help. But in addition to having the support of God, I mean, both, they go hand in hand. We have this saying of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He says a very powerful saying. He says, for every disease, there is a cure. God created a cure. Now you have to go and find that cure. And we have advanced so much in the field of science and medicine that we're not there yet completely, obviously. But there are those doctors who can address those issues. One last point on this, which I hate the way the way, how should I put it in a nice way, that the greed and the secular realm of our lives has overtaken our spirituality and make us focus on worldly material gains and possessions and all that. Basically, what I'm trying to say is the pharmaceutical companies have become so greedy that they have no regards to the human health or the human being, period, the end. I forget who was it, CEO of which pharmaceutical company, who said, we care more about our investors and directors than the patients. That's sad. That's really very sad. So you have, on the one hand, this notion of, keep those individuals on Prozac until whatever, and you have honest doctors who really want to treat the patient honestly in a way that they come out of whatever illness they may have.
Absolutely. Dr. Thomas, perhaps you can also give us more clarification, as you are a professional here. Are health professionals aware of the spirituality and religious faith within the community? In other words, are all doctors aware, or mental health professionals aware of different types of faiths and beliefs, and how to deal or how to address and be helpful for those who are going through mental illness? Well, I just wanted to give an example. I know a family member was going through some depression and anxiety, also going through some grief disorder, which later on was diagnosed by a professional that she's going through an adjustment disorder because of grief. Now, before that, she was given the opportunity to be seen by a faith leader, and that faith leader saw her and all of a sudden told her, you have the evil eye. Or perhaps you are going through these changes and this is really affecting you and is giving you these bad thoughts. Do more prayers, give more to charity, and it will go away. So that person actually went to a professional that is also aware of her faith. So that's what she's getting now, the proper treatment, and also she's able to talk to her doctor, because her doctor can relate to her religion and her faith, and it actually became a really good well-rounded treatment plan for her. So are all patients are all professional helpers are aware of these issues and where these patients come from?
So let me start off by saying this. Everyone that calls themselves a mental health professional doesn't necessarily mean that they have all the skills necessary. You have some people that are beginning counselors, and they necessarily may not know the appropriate methods to use to combine faith with mental health. So even though each counselor goes through multicultural training, and religion is a part of that, not everyone connects with that. So if you're going to be seeking a counselor, it's best to call them and ask them, do you include faith with mental health counseling? If that's something that you want, then you make sure that you get that. Interview that mental health professional. You ask them about their education. Ask them how long have they been in the field. Do they, again, what techniques do you use? What interventions do you use? It's okay to ask, because this is your health, your mental health. So if you're not getting what you need from that clinician, go somewhere else. Not all clinicians are the same. Not all of them use the same approaches. So you want to make sure that you're going to one that connects with you, your faith, and you as a person. I mean, I've had clients that I've seen that we didn't gel together. So I recommended them to someone else. That's my job as a professional, to make sure that that client gets the help that they need. It's not about me. So when we're talking about Repeat that question again. Not the story, but the actual question.
The question is, do professionals are aware of the spiritual and religious faith of their clients?
So yes, because when we do an assessment, we ask about faith. Do you practice any religion? We ask what religion. Some clients do, some clients don't. So yes, we definitely ask about that because we want to include the client as a whole person, and their faith and religion is part of that.
Absolutely. I wonder how of an impact is the counseling sessions when it comes to not in person but through
Telehealth.
the telehealth. When it comes to a spiritual person, you know how it is when you want to have a one-on-one, you can relate to someone, you know, when they're physically in front of you, especially when you are a person who's very faithful in their own religion. They want to see someone. I know I went through that with a family member as well. It was kind of hard for her to speak to a doctor through a telephone or via Zoom, and she's not able to express herself well because she's looking at someone through the screen. How does it actually? What kind of help it has? Or is it 100%? The patients and the professional doing 100% of counseling, and the patient is getting 100% of treatment, or is there a balance here? And how you go through it, actually.
That's an excellent question.
I know you're also teaching online as well as a professor. So go ahead, share your ideas with us.
So when telecounseling first came about, it was really something that people think wasn't going to be beneficial because, again, you don't have that face-to-face interaction. But in actuality, doing telecounseling is beneficial. It has been proven beneficial as a form of treatment, because you still get to see the client's face if you're doing it via some media platform using the internet, the computer. So the client still can see you and you can still see that client. And what helps the client is when the provider actually will notice certain body cues and will ask, because we have to be trained to analyze behavior as well. Like if someone is shaking their leg, I can't necessarily see that on the screen, but I can see that their shoulder may be moving a little bit, or that that something is just not right, that they're not maybe having good eye contact. Exactly, the voice is trembling. And I will ask, are you shaking your leg right now? And they're like, well, how did you know that? So you can still.
It's divine moment. It's a divine moment.
So there's certain behavior analytic techniques that counselors use when we're doing telecounseling. Even over the phone, you can hear in a person's voice when they have distress or when they're feeling sad. So those are the cues that professionals use when we're doing telecounseling. So yes, it is beneficial.
Very good. Thank you so much. So we still have a couple of points we want to look into here, but I want to give you guys.
I want to go back to you did mention something about the black magic and all that.
Yes.
This is something.
The evil eye.
Evil eye. Yeah, exactly. So we do get some clients that are very stressed out and depressed and feel that, or some members of the family suggest that they have the evil eye on them and things of that sort. Now, I would like to say here, first of all, black magic is real, okay? However, in most cases of the clients that I have seen, you know, it's an illusion. It's not even real. It's just, you know, playing on their mind all these ideas of the evil eye. Once we recite some verses of the Quran, all of a sudden they feel great. You know what I'm saying? But this is in many cases. Those are the soft cases. But the hard cases are real, and that goes beyond at least my expertise. I'm not trained in that. There are imams who are trained in spiritual healing. We call it ruqya shar'iyya. And so those patients who are truly been, spelled, magic had been spelled upon them, they will need special spiritual attention along with perhaps medical attention.
I know I came to Dr. Shadi and directed that question to him when I came to him for a question about that, and he made me aware about the whole concept of someone has been possessed or has black magic was
Or as we say in the Black community, somebody put a root on you.
right. So maybe Dr. Shadi, you want to repeat what you advised me and gave me some inputs about that as well.
Like a sensitive topic a little bit.
Yes,
but
yes.
we know magic exists in all religion and even in the books being mentioned. But how to deal with this and how to make the decision if this person needs to get a spiritual healing or to see a doctor. That is a little bit confused. But a person himself, he can describe and feel where he gets better in this field, or if he gets some people just need a reminder. Some people just need to someone to speak out their feeling and their fear. But absolutely, as Sheikh Mustafa mentioned, that this is real, and we have seen a lot of people who get affected from this. And in our book in the Quran, we have 3 verses. It's protect a believer from being affected by magic, and these verses we get the advice from the Prophet that if someone recite these 3 verses every day in the morning and in the evening, an angel will protect him from being affected from anything evil. So this is again, there is no conflict between knowledge, science, and religion. It become together.
Right. And I think that's where that conflict comes in historically, when we used to have religious leaders who think somebody, because they didn't know what mental illness was. So somebody that was acting erratic or heard voices, auditory or visual, they were seen as being possessed or having demons in them, or that they were sinning. So now we're looking thousands of years later and re-evaluating what mental illness actually looks like, and the difference between someone being possessed versus somebody having a mental health disorder or condition. So
I would like to hear from.
Lots of thoughts. There's a lot of interesting things that I'm sure we won't all cover, but I think one of the pieces I keep hearing from both Imam Mustafa and Dr. Shadi, Dr. Thomas, and Professor Howard is there's a humility in this that our religions call us to, right? Earlier today, I keep using that example. We had a great breakfast, and there's an organization called Micah 6, so to borrow from the Jewish prophet there, that seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And that humility is what we're called to. And sometimes when we don't try to understand, when we don't try to see things as being complex and nuanced and multi-layered, and I love, hey, I don't have that expertise. Maybe somebody else has that expertise. Professor Howard was also saying about the respect for expertise. Thomas Aquinas, who's a revered theologian, medieval theologian, who was influenced a lot by Islamic philosophers, Averroes, and that's how he got access to Aristotle, right? So that's just a little trivia for the day. But he was very much influenced, and one of his statements that I love is fides querunt intellectum, faith seeking understanding, so that our faith is always seeking to understand. And I think that is a great guide, and going back to your question, a way of addressing spiritual malpractice, and also realizing that sometimes, like fully agree, there doesn't need to be a conflict between science, knowledge, the arts, spirituality, faith, religion, and in some ways, our spirituality, our religion calls us to integrate them, to see how they all help us see God's work in the world, and be a part of it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Now, the last topic that we want to give a brief comment on it, if we can, since we don't want to take too much time
I
of
don't know
our
if this
audience.
panel can be brief.
I know, right? You all being so brief now.
What are you talking about? I've been brief this all down.
Okay, so which was one of the topics that I mentioned at the beginning, which is the stigma and the culture and religious values that play a significant role in mental health care and utilizing disparities. So we need just to give a little preview here, or a little advice in how can we give, let people know that how culture and religion can actually play a significant part in our mental health well-being, and how we can relate it instead of make it two separate beliefs or two separate ways of life when it comes to culture, value, and faith. So anyone here would like to give us a little briefing about that? And
I could say a word or two if you want.
Yes, please do.
Well, first,
go ahead, Professor Howard.
The comments are so interesting and illuminating. So the first thing is to piggyback on what Imam Alturk said earlier about the destructive nature of pharmaceutical companies. I would agree and add that a more subtle version of that is the destructive nature of social media platforms, which I think they give this false sense of connecting with other people when those connections aren't really real. And here's the point I want to make: they give platform to individuals who have a pseudo authenticity or a pseudo legitimacy to preach ideas which are actually very destructive. And I'm not going to mention any names, but there is this one particular rabbi on social media, and there's another voice on social media who is an observant Jew. And what these two are preaching in the name of spiritual assistance, more than anything else, they are preaching a very narrow-minded intolerance. So I think I mention them because what religion can really come to teach and help in terms of people coping with a variety of problems and challenges. Religions are based on tolerance, and I think all of our faiths, one of the common elements is we believe what we believe, and we know that we believe different things. And I think in some sense we each have a sense of chosenness, but we also have a deep sense of mutual tolerance. We love to hear not only the things that make us different, but the things that we have in common, and a sense of tolerance is right there. And here comes to this notion of spiritual, or let's call it, I think it was called clerical malpractice or clergy malpractice. What clergy should be preaching above all is, these days especially, is tolerance. So believe what you believe and be committed to what you believe, but in a larger framework of avoiding at all costs saying or thinking or feeling what I think is correct, and what you think is somehow lesser, is somehow inferior, is somehow ungodly. We all sort of have the same goal together. And it reminds me, and this whole conversation reminds me in terms of similarities and differences, and what religious ideas can help. It reminds me of a comment about 100 years ago that a German Jewish philosopher, Martin Buber, he was speaking to an ecumenical conference of, it was mostly Jewish and Christian clergy in Germany in the 1920s. And the question of the Messiah came up. Now, the question of the Messiah obviously is a question that divides, especially Judaism from Christianity. And what Buber said is, look, that's what divides us, is the question of, has the Messiah arrived already, or has the Messiah not yet come, which is what Jews believe. And Buber said, let's do this. When the Messiah eventually arrives, we'll just ask him, are you here for the first time, or are you here for the second time? Until then, there's no reason for us to fight or disparage each other. So for me, and I think from a Jewish perspective, it's tolerance that is the most important thing. And the clergy, the rabbis and other clergy, no less, I'm sure, have that responsibility of instilling a deep sense of spirituality, but also at the same, a sense of spirituality that leads and cultivates tolerance at the same time.
that because I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you're saying. I would nuance it just to say tolerance is almost the minimum line, right? Because, for instance, I don't want to tolerate my sister at some point. I don't want to tolerate my parents. I don't want to tolerate my children. I would love to, and I think, again, Professor Howard, your point's well taken. Compassion also is a part of our faiths. And so the more I can seek understanding as to why others believe what they believe, what is it that they believe? How is that meaningful? Even if we don't come to agree, as you're saying, I think the tolerance is the minimum for, I think, peaceful nation states to coexist. But I think the next step for faith is the compassion to understand others and see where they're coming from and what we can learn, again, about who God is and what God is doing in the world and be a part of it. So I think that's the challenge there of how we take that next step toward compassion.
Absolutely. Anyone else would like to step in?
Well,
Talking about the culture.
That's what I want to go back
and
to, culture. When we talk about culture, we have to really think about what that means, because culture plays a major influence on our perspective of the world. Our culture brings to it basically anchors us. It tells us we grow up with certain norms based on our family and what our ethnicity even brings into it. So someone from a Latino culture will have a different view of mental health than someone from the Islamic culture or from the Arab, in any culture, just pretty much. So we all view mental health differently based on our culture, our upbringing, our experiences. So when we're and even stigma, our cultures can contribute to mental health stigma with saying, well, have you ever been to a wedding and the pastor says to the husband and wife, what happens in your home stays in your home? That contributes to stigma. If you continue to stay isolated and keep your problems in your home, you will never get help. You will continue to basically eat yourself up from the inside out. So we have to help each other in reducing this stigma. Having more conversations such as this is what we need for everyone to be healthy mentally.
So basically, we have to be aware of the misconceptions when it
Exactly.
comes and they're not able to translate the wordings correctly. Yes, of course, things have to be inside the home, but what are we talking about here? We're not talking about violence. We're not talking about abuse. We're not talking about things that are happening in the home that affect us physically, mentally, and psychologically.
Exactly.
Perhaps if we don't have enough to eat and we have only enough food for one meal a day, that's something to keep to ourselves.
Well, no, no, that's not something to keep.
No, I meant what I meant is
there's so many resources.
Right.
Say,
but
for example, you don't have a meal. You call your cousin, hey, we don't have enough food today. Your cousin's gonna say, come get this plate.
But your culture will not allow you to do that.
Right. You see, when it comes to culture, that's the thing. When it comes to culture, there are certain things that you can handle. There's certain things that you can actually, pass on. And for example, when you're fasting, when you're fasting, you don't have that much food, but you are fasting through the whole day, but you have enough food just to break your fast with, then you can move on. So there are certain things that we keep in culturally to keep to ourselves.
That's different.
That's what I meant.
Absolutely.
So, but again, we do not, live to misconceptions, and we don't just keep things to ourselves. And remember, also, I wanted to also add this to our conversation is we need to have acceptance that we go through life with hardship. We go through life with anxiety and depression. It's a part of existing as a human being. It's also a healthy part of us that we feel that way. So we need to understand acceptance. We also need to be aware of our ways of how to deal with our stress. be mindfulness, having mindfulness through, using rituals, practices, prayers, anything, even just to walk in the wilderness, it's a part of us handling some kind of a stress. It's also just being aware and being mindful of everything that's surrounding us. But of course, not to give in to it, and not to isolate ourselves, and not to stop talking, or go to our imam or our pastor, our minister, our rabbi, and open up to them and get some guidance. But also not to forget that when it comes to culture and values, and within the religion, it always, the first thing to do is to go to a professional when it comes to mental health. Also, of course, if you are physically ill, you will go straight to the doctor. You're not going to go to your minister or imam, say, okay, I have cancer, give me a cure here. We do not tolerate. This is a part of us not tolerating what's actually affecting us physically, mentally, and psychologically. So I wanted to conclude here that when it comes to being mentally well, and going through the spirituality and religion, we all of us, we might find it helpful to feel connected to someone bigger than us. So perhaps we go, perhaps not in the age also, but in status, so we can go ahead and get some help and guidance from them. It might be helpful also for us to make sense of our experiences. We might feel strength or hope from our spirituality or religion. This may be actually more important to us when we have this kind of a hope of going to someone who's able to help us, and when we are in an unwell state of well-being. We may feel more peace with ourselves, with other people who are around us, who will actually help us. So as our motto here in the back of in our banner here, mental health is one of our greatest assets. So it helps us focus at work, overcome obstacles, get along with people around us, and much more. So let's all get well and stay well, and be hopeful, and be faithful that things will get better no matter how hard it seems. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today for May Mental Health Month. We are going to also advertise more and give more of our tips and awareness for May Mental Health. Appreciate all of our guests and our guests here in the office, and our panelists, and our audience in Facebook and all the social media. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. So we are here at Rahma Worldwide headquarters at Southfield, Michigan, Mental Health America of Southeastern Michigan, and a part also of Rahma Worldwide. We thank you all for joining us, and we hope to see you again our next event, Mental Health Wellness. And stay well, everybody. Thank you all, and see you next event. Thank you all. Thank you, Professor Howard.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. I appreciate that.